All right, everybody. Hello again. I'm so happy that you all are hanging around my channel. Today, I managed to grab another lesbian to talk to. I'm thankful she reached out to me and agreed to do this. Her name's Mac. She's in her 30s. She's a lesbian and she's a desister. She never medically transitioned, but she has some things to say about the whole gender stuff. Mac, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here and glad to, yeah. No, when you said like, think about what you want to say to other and younger lesbians, I was like, 3 pages of notes later, I have so many things to say.
Yeah. Sounds like me. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? It's more of a question of what do I not want to say?
What do I not want to say? Yeah, not much actually. So yeah, my like relevant bio here. So I was 17 in 2008. I was in high school. And I like had, had my like girl sexual awakenings. This was the thing. I was like, am I really a lesbian? And I was like, you know what? I've only had one sexual awakening, and that was Princess Leia in the bikini in
You know what?
episodes. Yeah. So like that's it. That's all there is. Like I've like had sex with men because I like enjoy the attention, but like no, like that's not.
Yeah.
I've never had that moment.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
That was my wife's as well, by the way.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
God, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, they like re-released the Star Wars in theaters like in the late 90s when I was a kid. So
Did you not feel kind of guilty as a feminist though? You're like, as a feminist, she shouldn't be in those clothes and being chained,
yeah,
but as a lesbian.
but like she chokes him out like right after that. That's the thing.
True.
It's
That
like
is hot.
it's
She
not
is
like
a
she's in it
badass.
on purpose. Like, she is
That's true. That's
in
true.
bondage in the literal sense.
You
And
know
then it's
what? I
like,
didn't think. I guess I was thinking about like not the movie, but behind the scenes that men told her
yeah,
she had as an actress she had to get in.
yes.
I guess
As an
that's
actress, you have to get in that. Yes, that's the part that sucks. But ugh. But
anyway.
boy,
So you
yes. Anyway,
had your sexual
so
awakening.
I had all that. I'd had a girlfriend in high school that like, our parents broke us up. It was a whole like traumatic, but I'd always been like super masculine and like very much like teased for it as a kid, like so much, like literally PTSD levels actually,
What were
which
some of the things they'd say to you?
oh, so it was all making fun of like how I look masculine. Like we said before we started recording that like I have PCOS, so I have more facial hair than most girls. I'm like pretty, dark and hairy. Like my voice, obviously, like I am a desister. I have never been on T, even though, like Carol said, it kind of sounds like it. Um, but yeah, kids would just fucking torture me about that shit, and
So this would have started in like high school, right? Like once puberty started?
Nah, it was like kindergarten. Like I remember kids like on the kindergarten bus, like all chanting that like Dada is the fat lady, Dada is the fat lady, like insert my name. Like, and so it just like never stopped. And I was always sort of rough and tumble, and like kids could tell I was different. And
okay, I guess that's what I was trying to get at, because like I too experienced kids when I was like 8 and 9.
Oh yeah,
making fun of me, said I wanted to be a boy. I was acting like a boy when I did. My mother didn't allow me to dress masculine or cut my hair or anything. So like,
exactly. What were you talking about exactly?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't doing anything different really, like than other kids, other than just like I don't know, being an oldest daughter. Like,
but so you didn't dress in boys' clothes or have short hair when you were a kid?
No, like I had like that's the thing. Like my mom didn't really like. My mom dressed me basically like not until I went to college, pretty much. Like
okay,
not exactly, but functionally. And yeah, no, I always dressed like on the femme end of things until like college, pretty much, when I could go like raid Goodwill on my own. My mom called it girl college grunge, which like
oh yeah, that sounds fun.
Is amazing. I was like, Mom, that's perfect. Thank you. And she was like, that's not what I meant. And I was like, I don't care. But so yeah, I'd always had that sort of like knowing that I was different. And then I was into girls. And then, I was 17. Again, this is 2008.
Okay.
Tumblr does not exist. YouTube is 1 year old.
Oh
like
God.
to
Yeah.
put you back in the time. Like
Oh, I remember that.
we did
Yeah.
not have, yeah, you remember, the people listening may not remember. I have roommates that are younger, and I told one of them, it's like, yeah, I didn't have a smartphone until college. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, like there were no smartphones in high school. Their social media was not in your pocket
It was
in the
not a
way
thing.
that it was not a
Yeah.
thing. It didn't
You
exist.
had to have a big old hunk of computer.
You had to have a you had to have a college email address to have Facebook at this
Oh
time.
shoot. Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
literally, I remember that. It was like 2007, 2008. But so like I don't even know, like, I don't know how. I can't, like, it wasn't like I was, you know, I knew any like trans men, or like knew that this was like a thing, but I was just like, I want to be a boy. Like I want to be a boy. Like I like girls. The boys have all the fun. I was reading lots of like the Beats, like Jack Kerouac and shit, like, which, fun, not very, big misogynist, let's put it that way. And
Okay.
then so
I've
I was
never read it,
not,
so I'll take your word for
yeah,
it.
big misogynist, like big time, partially because of the time, but I was not exactly consuming feminism really at that age. And so for a few months I was like, call me this, like, I'm a boy now. Like there was no like demanding that, because like you were saying when your conversation with Rachel on Stonebridge Disco, like you couldn't just go around and like tell people like, no, you have to call me that. Meh, meh, meh. Like that did not exist. Like that was
No,
not a
people
thing.
people tell you shut the fuck
Shut the
up.
fuck up.
They would
Like,
get the fuck
yeah,
out of here.
literally they would be like, what do you want? Like, Jake, leave me alone. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, no, it was not a thing.
So you came to the conclusion that now
Just in a vacuum. I swear to God.
yeah.
Like I remember
No,
like,
but you
yeah.
came to the conclusion that you wanted to be a boy, or that you felt like you should have been a boy, or you really were a boy in a female body. Like, because there's some
Um,
distinction there.
I don't think I didn't like have the concept of like I was like a boy trapped in a girl's body. Like that didn't, I don't think I really had that notion. There was some like, oh, like if only I had been born a boy, like
Yeah.
sort of wistfulness, and like, no, maybe I would be like playing baseball and like da da da, like, because I, was very aware as a young girl watching sports, was like, what? Everybody watch boy sports, but like, what if
Yeah.
I want to play sports? Like, what the fuck? Like, and there it
So you just kind of you just decided that you wanted to be a boy, and you started to tell people that you
yeah,
were a
basically,
boy, or
and pretty much. And I was like, and like, because this was like very early social media, so like there was like name change on like, I think this was like right, this point in senior year was like right after Facebook let
okay.
any email address like get an account. So I was like, change my name on Facebook, like, try to like Googling what is a binder, like that kind of shit, like,
Oh yeah.
the whole sort of baby.
But where did you hear about this stuff?
I have no idea.
Don't
That's the
remember.
thing. I don't remember. Like that's the like problem with the
Were
PTSD
you
brain, but like
well, but
it wasn't.
were you hanging around or in LGBT community?
No. I
No.
grew up in a
Okay.
like pretty small town in the South, like not
Okay.
a rural small town, but like I went to a Catholic high school. Like there was no LGBT community. Like,
I mean,
and I don't think there was one online that I was in at that point either. Like, other than like fandom shit, like, you know, hanging out in live journal communities, like talking
mhm.
about slash fan fiction and shit. Like that was the closest thing I had to like gay community growing up. But yeah,
No,
no,
I think this is interesting though, because I think this is a common experience with lesbians, and
it
I think with
is
especially with butch or gender nonconforming lesbians.
totally.
I mean, because I've read stories of women. Well, we know women from the 50s would bind, and further back.
Yeah,
Like this
because
is not a
it's
new.
it's not a new phenomenon, because
Yeah.
people will always tell like gender nonconforming women, especially lesbians, that like you're doing it wrong, and like
Hmm.
you must be something else. Like, you can't, you're not a woman because you're doing it wrong.
And when you get this shit so early, like you
So
did
early
and I
and
did,
so often,
like
like
what is that doing? What's that
it
setting up in your head, you know?
post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yeah.
which,
Well, it's, yeah.
yeah, like
I you know
literally talking to
I've
my therapist, I'm like, man, why do I hate myself so much? She was like, well, didn't you have all these kids telling you all these reasons why you should hate yourself for like, 18 years? And I was like, or 12 years, however long it was. And I was like,
Yeah, that'll do it.
yeah, that'll do it, won't it? It's like, it's not internal. It's just like, you know, your
Yeah.
neural pathways are used to running that route because you've heard it for so long.
Yeah, I also think there's a point. There's also you're gonna start to believe or wonder or think that there really is something profoundly different with you if other people can see something and they're all seeing the
Yes.
same thing. They're all saying the same thing, right? They're all saying
Yeah.
you're a boy, you're acting like a boy, you're behaving like a boy, you got boy stuff going on. And
Yeah.
I mean, how do you retain your like womanhood through that? Especially because, girls can be just as mean with that kind of stuff.
Oh, and oh man, just as mean. Yeah.
Like,
I,
I mean, most of the shit I got was from, girls,
oh
young
yeah.
peers. The boys would usually just shoot off some kind of misogynistic mean shit and then like ignore you. I
Yeah.
mean, that was my experience, but like the girls would go after you
Oh man.
and exclude you too. And when you're excluded, like for me, I always felt like as a butch
Oh
woman,
yeah.
I had no camp. There's
No.
no camp I belonged in. I didn't belong with the women.
No.
I didn't belong with the men. I just sitting out here going,
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Literally.
Okay, so you get into this. You okay? So you start to identify as a boy.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. And like, I don't think there was no, I was thinking about this earlier, like there was no like identification as trans, like that was not like an identity that one could like, you were a transsexual, but like it wasn't that sort of like nomenclature, I don't think like really existed at that point, or like was at least was not
It wasn't in broad, like
suffused into like, yeah,
huge use. Like it wasn't
huge
all over the
use.
place where yeah,
No, it
exactly.
wasn't something that like a kid growing up in a, small town in the South, even with internet access, could find easily. Like,
Yeah. It was something
and
that was definitely already kicked off in San Francisco, though.
that was the thing that blew my mind about listening to your story. It was just how fucking soon that was happening out there. I was like, God damn, like,
Yeah. And I think that's why, I only live about 4 hours from San Francisco. And so I think that's why I got it so early in the early
yeah,
2000s, because that shit had already been kicking off in San Francisco for 5 or 6 years in the 80s. I mean,
it
in the
literally had
90s.
rippled out. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
crazy.
I'm from a somewhat rural area too. And when you're a homo in the rural area, very often there is crossover between the big cities, especially when they're only 4 or 5 hours away,
Totally,
because it's a
totally.
place you can go to find others, party, feel like you can be safe where
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing in your
Mm-hmm.
hometown. So
Yep.
like that crossover is real.
Yeah, totally. It is, yeah, it would be the hub of activity in the area.
So who did you identify yourself as a boy to? Did you
Oh,
tell everybody or?
I mean, I told friends, but I also like told Facebook, which was like mistake because it
Oh,
was not the point where like adults were on Facebook or anything. It was just like other kids. So
okay.
that was, I mean, I was dumb like to totally like open myself up to just like continue teasing about it. Like after I had finally sort of like gotten most of the guys to stop and the girls were not paying that much attention to me. They're too much busy paying attention to boys, I think, at this point.
Mhm. They're like,
But
she's a lost cause.
yeah, literally, she's like, whatever. But after throwing a few punches, that got the job done. Because they were like, oh my god, this bitch crazy. And I'm like, yes, don't fuck with me.
Mm.
Um, uh, but oh, I lost my trail. Oh, there's a big bug. See you later. Um, uh,
Um, okay, so you'd started identifying
oh
as
yeah, to friends
the
mostly, and
friends
like
in the little tiny
friends
Facebook that existed.
like it basically got out to like my high school like
And how did they
friends.
respond to that?
My friends were like, okay, like they were just like, because when you're graduating classes like 65 people, there's an in crowd and an out crowd. Like you're either you're in the fun group and get invited to the parties, or you're not, and like all the people that are not all got to be friends. Like
Oh
so
yeah.
so we were
You're,
all homies, and so it was those people, but then all of the other kids in high school were just like, more reason to make fun of you. And I was just like, man, this sucks. Like,
did you
ugh.
have any kind of thought of how far you were going to take your identity as a male?
I mean, I see that I had like funnily enough, because I think the like weight crossover thing is major, because I remember at that point like knowing or seeing enough like, to know that like the like skinny androgynous like butch like was the ideal. And like I knew enough to know that like my tits were way too big to be coming off in any way that was gonna like still look like nice afterwards. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to. But like the concept of like going on testosterone like never occurred to me or like anything like that. So it is, I wish I could like go back and like actually like dust off my memory and be like, what were you thinking? Like, where were you reading this stuff? Like,
do you feel like, how do you feel if you would have come into this 10 years later? Like if in this kind of atmosphere, or even the atmosphere of say 2014 or 15, when this stuff really started to blow up everywhere.
Yeah.
So the like trans and gender and stuff.
Actually, I heard somebody on a podcast posit as to why, because I also like have fingered that year, like 2015.
It is
like
2015.
But
I don't know why it's just this.
I finally heard someone say why. It's because Martine Rothblatt was named female CEO of the year in 2014. Then was on the cover of Time magazine or whatever. That was like, that's the first like guess about why.
I am going to refrain from talking any further about that dude, because there's a whole fucking thing.
We don't even if you were like, you wanted to keep this to an hour, like that would not be an hour. But no, that is the only time I've heard is positive as to why it's that time. But yeah, it is that moment. But
the media, I think, really started to blow up the trans dudes.
The money started flowing about then.
Yeah, the men.
Yeah, the 2017, 2018. Yeah. Look at HRC's fundraising the last 10 years, folks.
I said this is not the podcast.
No, okay, all right. Oh, okay.
You need to start your own.
Yeah, I am on my own. This is Stone Butch Disco. I'm a host now.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a crossover. No, it's a crossover episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're identifying as a boy. You just felt like, did you feel good about that? How did that help? Did it help you?
I mean, it didn't help me. And that's the thing. I was just like, it sort of like came on, as a result of hearing all that shit for so long. And like, I must have like stumbled upon some mention of it somewhere online and thought like, this must be what I am. And then,
or maybe not, because like we both know, Butch Lesbians has been coming up with this idea for a long time.
And I mean, I knew even without that, like posit, like just the idea that like there was something wrong with me as a woman and that like I was not exactly one.
Yeah.
Was hard, was big at that time.
It's and like you knew you were female, but you're like, I'm not a woman.
I'm not a woman.
I mean, that's how I kind of
like I don't know what I am, but I'm not that. And then I went to college. Thankfully, which happened right after, because this was my senior year of high school. So I didn't ever tell my parents, like I didn't come out as gay to my parents until like several years after this. Like, so that was not in the cards, at least in the near future for me. Like I didn't know what this is.
You were still figuring your shit out.
I was 17. Kids have no long-term thought.
Oh
like
my God.
That's the thing, is like kids don't know shit. Like
no, they don't.
Like developmentally, like scientifically, they just don't. And
if any adult would honestly look back at themselves as kids, they would know that.
Yes, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. I actually that's the thing. I was like, this is what made me a good teacher. Like, I actually remember being a kid and like in some ways, and like remember like just that like you're just totally lost and like trying to figure out like who you are and what you're about, and and
you try a lot of things on.
You try a lot of shit on, and that was one of the things I tried on for about 4 months and got teased about it a lot. And then I got focused on college. And then
so you went to college.
I went to college. So I went to here's the kicker though. I went to a women's college, and like at the funny thing is that like and here more background, like as a kid, I was totally like one of the not like the other girls, like girls are so mean, like girls are so catty, like I like hang out with boys. I'm not like that. No. Even though most of my friends were girls, like but which whatever. And so when I was applying to colleges, like I think I applied to, mostly co-ed schools. I only applied to one women's college because they had a program that I was like interested in.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to like visit, and I was like gonna, was getting considered for a scholarship. So I went to do the like, scholarship presentation, blah, blah, blah. And I stayed for a weekend, and I was like, holy shit, this is cloud nine. There's women everywhere, but there's women, all kinds of different women. There's women like me. There's women that are really hot. There's all kinds of women in between. There's like skinny women and big women and like lesbians, and like there's conservative girls here walking around like in their riding pants. Like it's everything. Like and just being able like seeing that like that first really that like visit weekend like
Yeah.
was so, I think that really was what like broke the spell, honestly, like before because that was like late spring of my senior year. Because like I already gotten in, like blah blah blah, but ended up getting, some money, yay. But going to college in 2008 after the financial crash, lame. But
Yeah.
and I think that really seeing other like masculine girls and like a bunch of them for the first time was pretty radical. Like I had some like camp counselors that like didn't shave their armpits and shit, but like they were still like femme, really. Like they didn't, and they weren't like lesbians, or at least didn't say they were, but going to a women's college and like seeing like lesbian couples walking around and like,
Do you know
oh my
the
God.
way you're talking about this reminds me of the way I've heard other women, other lesbians especially, talk about their first time at Mitch Fest or going to
Totally.
Mitch Fest,
It
where
was a long women's fest. Yeah.
where they finally got in a space where there was just women of all shapes, sizes, and kinds, and they were like, oh, I see myself.
Oh,
And also I'm in an environment where, well, at least for Mitch Fest, from what I've heard, it's also an environment that is pretty damn accepting. Like they
that's the
have,
thing. Yes, the environment is so accepting and just like so much like solidarity and camaraderie. And
did you, so you're talking about the college, you found that was
yeah,
the case in the
yes.
college?
Oh,
Okay.
totally, totally. And just like I mean, I will never like shut up about the benefit of like a women's education, like because it just the vibe in the classroom without dudes is so elite.
I
It's
was gonna
elite.
say the vibe anywhere without a dude
Yes.
is
The
very different. The minute a
for
man walks in,
yes,
it
literally.
changes.
It
It
changes
totally
everything.
changes.
It changes everything. We like yeah, you could really tell at the women's college too when like someone would bring their boyfriend to a party, we'd all be like,
Eh.
like one boy, fine. Like if there were a critical mass, we were like, ew, you guys gotta go. Like, nah. And just being able to like party and like not worrying about like getting fucking like raped if you accidentally like pass out in a bush somewhere, like
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think about
huge.
that.
Yes, because it
But
was really
man, that would have been
this
nice.
the
Huh.
safety of it. Like you just never locked your doors. Like it was 4 years of a women's festival. I've never been to one, but I've heard other people talk about them, and yeah, that's what women's college was
And
like.
this is 2008, 2009 and
Yeah.
onward, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like here, even in this time, or in that time, which is, not that long ago,
No.
you're like we're seeing how valuable women's spaces are.
Oh yeah. And like that's the thing. And like I did not go in expecting like gung ho, like, yeah, like I want to go to women's college. Like I literally was like I guess I could like be around girls for 4 years, like whatever. And then I go for a weekend and I'm like, all right, this is the best shit ever. Like, where do I sign? Like, this is great. And the opportunity to like be safe and like be able to like have a girlfriend. Like, so
And
I
your
like,
parents were cool with
oh
you going to
well,
girls'
yeah, they were
college?
so happy to like, they were like, oh great, like, it was in state, like da da da, like everybody was, because it didn't like it bless their hearts, they didn't go like, oh, this means Max a lesbian. Like I think they
Yeah, I
maybe
was just thinking
they
like
probably had some idea, but like it wasn't like
If
Oh
I would
no.
have had the opportunity to go to like a women's school, like a girls or women's school period, like whenever, I think I would have really dug it too.
Oh yeah. I
But
mean,
like I'm just thinking like my mom would have never let me do that because she would have just been like, there's a bunch of dykes there.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure like I definitely heard those jokes like from
Yeah.
family members and stuff, and I was just like, uh-huh.
Yeah. It's like
Well, if
it's
only there's no dykes there. I'm like having my first like lesbian sex like like in the first month of school. Like I like immediately end up in like a torrid, like emotionally abusive relationship that lasts
oh
for
God.
7 years.
Oh
RIP.
no.
I know. It's like which, whatever. But she was like that was my first like butch femme like experience. And like that's the the sort of corollary to that too is you know I had no idea what that was. No idea that that was like a concept or like anything. I had no reason to know really until I started dating this girl who was femme, and
Hmm.
I just had somebody say one time like, "Oh, like wow, it's such a cute like butch femme couple, like da da da." And I was like,
You're like, what?
"Oh, what?" It's like I guess that yeah, like, and then I do onto the Google machine, and I was just like, "Oh, wow, no, this is like a whole thing. Holy shit! Like this has been going on forever. Like wow." And
So you consider yourself butch?
oh yeah, and like yeah, definitely. Like
When
all of
you
my
when
like
you kind of
long
discovered that identity or that way of viewing yourself, did you fall into it pretty quick? Did you feel like it answered some things for you or
oh, and then like that's the thing that like it fit like a glove. Like the like finding that like pas de deux like with the femme being like, oh wow, there's like a recipient for like when I want to like be chivalrous or like
hmm
do cute like open the door for her, like do cute things like that. Like there was the other side of the coin that was there, like the other half of the equation in a way that like makes Rachel and I talk about this a lot is like there in some ways like there is no like butch without femme, like I think in the sense that like I mean not that you like have to be in a relationship to like be a butch obviously, but
hmm
like it's the essential like relationship and like the duality of it. There's like another word I'm thinking of, but like a dyad, I
it's kind of like
suppose. Like
a yin yang thing.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
you can't have one without the other. Like they balance each other out, and like
Yeah.
they are a complete set. That's the thing too. It's like when people are like, "Oh, you're like just pretending like it's pretending to be straight." I'm like, nah. Like
Yeah.
what happens in a butch femme relationship has no like nothing. No, nothing in a butch femme relationship is like anything like a straight relationship. And like not that I had some boyfriends in high school and whatnot just as because it felt like obligatory, and again I was like, oh, I like the attention, this is fun. um
hmm
but I don't know, nothing about them felt right.
Yeah. So, um, you were gonna, so, okay, so you've, what about, you talked about the feminism aspect.
Yes.
Did you get some feminism at this school? Is that kind of also
Oh
like something
yeah,
that helped you?
so that's the funny thing is like not only did like the seeing that it was possible was like the first step, and then I had to actually like do the hard work of working on like the internalized misogyny and like you know noticing all those moments where I'm like, oh, like I can't do that because I'm a girl, or like, oh, like why is she behaving like that, that's slutty, and I'm like, wait, what? Or all of those sort of like inferiority things that you carry around. Like that's
Yeah.
really the thing I had to work on.
I think we're
And
all taught to view men as the human, the
oh
ideal
yeah,
human,
oh
like what they do, what they like, everything about them is this go-to standard,
yep,
and that's everybody's trained that way.
everyone's trained that way. And that seeing other lesbians and seeing other masculine women was helpful, but yeah, it took you know 4 years of sustained study and more to break down the, man as ideal thing. And what at the time, my freshman year, I took a literary theory class that was like, I think it was required for my major in some way, shape, or form. Because I remember not really wanting to take it because it was a retrospective and blah blah blah. And I remember at the time being like, man, why are we reading all of these like old essays from the like 60s? These are boring. Who are these ladies? What are they so angry about? And looking back now, in recent times, I realized like, holy shit, I was reading second wave feminism for the first time. I was reading Monique Wittig and shit that Susan Sontag and people that whose names don't get a lot of play these days, and had the opportunity actually to do my own research and read more about what they actually thought and like what the second sex is about, and get the sort of people to see the history of feminism in the West, from the suffragettes to at the time what was third wave feminism ish. But that even to me at the time, I'm like, this doesn't seem right. Like, I don't know, something about this is not as fun as the like, or not as empowering as the like.
Something about what? Which thing?
Something about the third wave feminism of like, buying things makes you a feminist, and you want to be a like, what makes you feel whole as a woman, like getting cosmetic surgery and like buying makeup and striving for perfection. I was like, this does not seem like the feminism that is going to work for me. And
it seemed to become more of a way to try to force women into force women into being like men.
Oh yeah.
And doing the men things to be considered equal versus making space for women as they are, which I think is what the second wave wanted to do, as well as some of them wanted to up in the whole society, which, hey, whatever. But I mean,
I think we all could use with a little more lesbian separatist energy in our lives. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just a good shot of realism every now and again. But what was I saying? But no, that having the opportunity to sort of like learn about second wave feminism and what people sort of disparagingly called essentialism now. It's like, oh, it's how awful that like, being born a way like means something inherent about you. I was like, well, I think that's just material reality, that we're a sexually dimorphic species, and
well, also it doesn't. It doesn't.
It's right? Exactly.
Like, there are it means there's a biological side to that, but then there's also a whole cultural side to that, and we can challenge the cultural side.
And that I think that's the thing that, I don't know, frustrates me so much about the queer theory sort of eating everything so much, is like this notion that like you could sort of shape reality on your own, or that like reality is not something that's like observable.
Yeah, I mean, with that came out of the whole, this whole philosophy of like reality doesn't exist. So I mean, it's just like it's a whole basket case of crap. And the more I've kind of engaged with some of the writings that lesbians were doing in the 90s, and even some of the older lesbians or bisexual women who were around during that time, and who maybe were into what was, more what would be queer culture back then. It was a little different, but still there was those elements there. But they really thought they were really doing something, and it's just like, and at the time, like, you can see how it made sense, because they were still acknowledging biological facts. It's when the biological facts got stripped out that everything just completely went off the rails, because I think they were still treating it as an idea, as a philosophy, or a way of living your life. Not necessarily like, no, this is actually reality. Science says it's reality. And you're like, what?
No. And like
I mean, but you can also see the problem starting though. Like
Yeah,
there are some
yeah.
essays I've read that I'm like,
Mm,
in hindsight, this is going to become a problem.
truly, yeah, no, you really can watch it happen. And that's the crazy thing about, looking back now as a 30-year
Yeah.
old, is just like,
You know what else is a trip looking back is when you
ugh,
look back at second wave feminism and the writings and the stuff they predicted then.
so much,
I'm like, okay,
so
look,
much.
I gotta give it, you say what you want, but I think the ladies might have been right,
They were
folks, because they
fucking right.
predicted the shit.
They were fucking right. Okay. Like that's the thing now, is like people, and the ongoing fucking smear campaign against second wave feminism that I feel like is, still, like, if you even try to mention second wave feminism or like talk about any of these, women's ideas, or, you know, bring up the idea that, like, hey, maybe we should be focused on breaking down the like sex stereotypes and not like sex as material reality, because that's why like women are,
Yeah.
treated as second class citizens, because we have the ability to like create life.
So
And
when did you stop identifying as a boy or male or whatever? Like when
oh,
did you just kind of let that go?
it really was like, it was the weekend that I like went on that like trip to like see the college, and then just sort
Really?
of like
It was like
totally,
that.
it
You're like, I
really,
never, you know what? Never mind.
and because I mean it like lingered a little bit like through college. Every now and again it would come up like, maybe like, but then I would just be like, ah, I'm like, I always had this notion that like, I'm not, there's something I can do that's gonna like make my like female body go away. Like I just have to
Mhm.
be one with it and be accepting of it. And like at the time I just sort of, tried not to think about it too hard, and like,
Would you say that
had
you
sex in the dark and shit. But like now, like this is,
so would
in
you say that you've struggled with what is categorized now as gender dysphoria?
uh yes, I would say like, in especially like, but I would say that it was like brought on by like, societal expectations and like what kids were telling me, and other people reading me as, or telling me that I was like a boy, not something that was like innate in me, or some like, oh, like I have some mismatch between
I mean, you didn't believe
my
that.
brain. No, like I
You just
didn't.
had these feelings and you were just uncomfortable with being a woman. You were comfortable
Yeah,
with
I
your
was.
body, with
Yeah.
your sexuality. Did you struggle with your
uh,
sexuality?
Actually, surprisingly little. I struggled with that, honestly. I, I had sort of, again, not a lot of long-term thinking. I was just like, well, I mean, I'll just never tell my parents that I'm a lesbian, and just like I'll have a separate like family life for my, that family, and then like it's my friends and my girlfriend. It'll just be separate. It'll be fine. And so I wasn't really like torturing myself over being gay. Like
Okay.
I never mind. Internalized homophobia was never really my big problem.
Okay.
It was definitely internalized sexism that was like the real beast
So
at
it
work
was more
there.
okay, so it was more the
Yeah,
misogyny
it
and
was the
stuff
more the
that you was
misogyny that was like
yeah.
really the problem, and the like the wanting so bad to, you know, not be the target of that, and wanting so bad to be what I thought was the thing to be, which was a guy. Because no, boys are
And
fun. Like boys get to do whatever they want. Like,
yeah,
you know,
which is I mean
boys get
from
to be famous and like have people read their books and like be on TV and play sports and like,
which is such a common experience, I think, with
yeah,
all women. Like all girls and women go through this when you're in a
literally,
patriarchy society and you're
literally,
not,
which is what
you
makes
know,
me so like, what's kind of, you've been like awake to all of this shit in the last 4 years, like, and more like, but like I've only sort of like had this, realizing how many, young gay girls are, you
a
know,
lot,
trans
a
in some
lot.
respect, and like so many of them medicalizing. And I want people to ask themselves why. Like,
Yeah.
why else would you hate yourself as a woman in a patriarchal society than just like straight up misogyny? Like it's that easy. Like
Yeah.
we
I
live
mean,
in a world where like where girls are gross and boys are cool in
yeah. I
off
mean,
one side and down
even
the other. Like whether
like,
or not you fit into the category of woman, like, and then not fitting into that category is like even more, then you're really doing it wrong. Like not
right?
only are you with the like less cool ones, you can't even do that right.
Mhm.
Like
I think that this that what is categorized as gender dysphoria, because it's become so all encompassing that, like, basically if you feel any discomfort with your sex body, they'll just categorize that as gender dysphoria and that's it.
yeah,
But also we can break all these things down and figure out and
but
kind of
also
see why we mimight have these feelings.
why exactly? Like, and part of what I think, not only going to a women's college and seeing that, you don't, there's not one way to be a woman, but just my, you know, unending like curiosity. Like I'm always asking why about shit. Like I'm a big fat nerd. I always have been. So yeah, I asked myself why do I feel like this? And even though I hadn't really put together at 18 that it was because of all the bullying, I could put together at 18, especially after, reading some fucking Gloria Steinem, that like I felt like this because people made me feel bad about being a woman. Like,
Yeah. And also
and because like I was being like asked to achieve some like standard of womanhood that like was fake to begin with.
but also demanded, you were demanded of to achieve some kind of thing that men do that you can't do either.
You can't do either. Exactly.
It's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I cannot do 100 pull-ups and join the military. Okay.
No.
Like,
No.
personally, me, no, that's not, I'm not going to be able to keep up with the dudes. I shouldn't have to
You
be
shouldn't
considered
have
an
to.
equal.
That's the thing. That's the piece of second wave feminism that is like that people
Yes,
really need to get now. It's like
absolutely.
you shouldn't have to. Like
No,
we can be different and be like good at our own shit and
because
like have our own specialties. Like this is
its values and
have our own intrinsic
centers
value.
women and
Yes.
what women do and what women
Yeah.
like and what women are capable of. It centers women instead of centering
Women.
men, and
What a
that's a big
concept.
difference. Once you start centering women, the world really does change. The view does change.
It really does. And like third wave feminism, like the whatever what passes for feminism these days does not center women. Like
No, absolutely
not
not.
in any way, shape, or form.
No,
And yeah,
I feel like it centers our bodies a lot.
yeah,
That's the feeling
unfortunately.
I got from it, at
Yeah.
least.
And what's wrong with them and what people can sell us to make them better or
And
make
how
them
we
more
can feel
palatable
and how we can feel so good about ourselves if we, push up our tits and
and do porn.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
just like,
So
what?
empowering to do porn.
So empowering. Just lean in, ladies. Come
Lean
on.
in, ladies. Who benefits? This is the other question that
Who
like
benefits? Yeah.
I, got asked in college or whatever, reading anarchist zines and shit, like, and asking myself fucking almost every day is like, who benefits from this? Who benefits when you feel bad about yourself? Like, who benefits when you go fill your fucking testosterone prescription? Like, who benefits?
Yeah. So have you always been I mean, do you consider yourself gender critical?
I mean, I would
Um
now, like,
a
in the sense that, like,
turf, a rad fem. I don't know, like there's all
I
these
mean,
terms flying around everywhere.
there's all these terms, and
But
like,
like, kind
that's
of
the
where do you see yourself in this, what we're sitting in now?
so that's the funny thing is like, because I like stopped teaching in 2016. I got off Tumblr in like 2015. I like really just was like living under a rock for the last
Yeah.
like
Okay.
literally I've been living under a rock
So
until about
is
6 months ago, which is funny. Or like six months to a
have
year
you been
ago.
involved in like the LGBT community?
No, like
No,
I
not
like I
even.
had a
Okay.
long-term girlfriend. Like I'm a homebody. I don't really
Okay.
like do like
Are you a little bit of a lone wolf?
yeah, I'm basically that's one thing. I'm like kind of a lone wolf. I'm a homebody. I don't really like going out to like bars. There is actually a lesbian bar in my city, but like there's so many fucking like straight couples there looking for a fucking unicorn. I'm just
Oh
like,
my God, that
leave
shit.
me alone. Or bachelorette parties like on
Oh,
tourist trips. I'm like, leave me alone. Get out of my fucking bar. Oh my
dude,
God.
me and my wife talk a lot about how we should have stamped that shit out back in the fucking like late 90s, early 2000s when that was happening. That was a
Literally.
mistake.
It was a mistake.
It was a mistake to let these goddamn breeders in. I know I'm going to piss
Seriously.
people off with saying breeders.
I
That's
say
what
I
we used
fucking
to
say it
call them.
too. No,
That's what
I'm
we used to call them.
yes. No, I literally like people like always look at me like, I can't believe you said that when I said it. I'm like, fucking fight me. Like,
We're supposed to call them spicy straights now.
spicy
That's
straights.
the nicer way of doing it. But
Spicy straights. That cracks me up. Oh, I know
I've never
so
been
many.
super nice. So
I know so many fucking spicy straights. When I started seeing those memes, I was like, oh my God, I knew all of
right.
these people. Oh my God, all
So
these like
you weren't
bisexual women in long-term straight relationships.
so you weren't in the LGBT loop. You
No,
weren't an activist. You weren't in
I
any of that
wasn't
kind
in
of stuff.
shit.
So okay.
No, like that's the thing. It's like I wasn't in shit. I had no idea what was going on. I was living under a rock. And so I like, saw the like, you know, trans, gender queer, whatever thing sort of emerge like at a distance. And I was like,
And how did you see it first
okay.
emerge? Would you start seeing?
I mean,
And what year would this have been?
so this I suppose would have been like, yeah, 2015. And
Okay.
like I do pin it on that because like that's when I first started seeing like more kids getting into it and like more people like just more people in like in fandom spaces on the internet and like more just people that I knew as girls, all of a sudden not girls anymore, apparently.
Okay.
And then when I, was off the internet, I still would see it, at a distance. Like I would see the like trans lives matter and like all that sort of like
It
I
also
would see
started to
the
be really super
fringes of the
drenched. The media
propaganda.
drenched it. Like the media
Yes.
it was all over the media too.
That's the thing too. It's like now, and I saw it drenched all over the media and I was like, but at this point, like by like 2016, 2017, I was just like tired of like Pride anyway and all that shit. Cause I was like,
You're like,
this is fucking corporate. Like, I don't like, I went to a Pride thing and I was like, why are there fucking corporations here with
right?
booths like hanging out swag? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, what is this
Yeah.
bullshit? Like, I was on that shit like way a long time ago. So I always am sort of
Okay.
like kind of like suspicious of that kind of shit and like of like media representation, especially like I never watched the L Word. Like, I'm like,
Okay.
I'm a very rare lesbian. I'm like, no, I don't
Did
want to
you
watch fucking straight representation of lesbians. Like, I
no,
don't.
can I ask, did you ever
Uh-huh.
watch just one episode? Did you ever just dip your toe in? Do you know it at
I
all?
mean, I know it like by cultural osmosis because like
Okay.
all the all of the other
Because
lesbians in school watched it like in college.
I have to say I am one of the very few lesbians that will actually say that was a piece of shit, detrimental show.
Fucking thank you.
And
Thank
it
you.
never, no, none of us should have watched it.
Thank you.
And they should have never brought it back. And if
Thank
lesbians
you.
don't stop looking to Hollywood to be validated, we are going to continue to crash.
Literally. Thank
Don't
you.
do that.
Don't do that shit. And so like even when I didn't have the words for that, I like knew I'm like Hollywood is not going to sell me anything I want.
No.
Like
Hollywood doesn't, let's be honest, it doesn't represent facts at all.
It doesn't represent shit.
Anybody.
This is why women have been like using their own creative juices to like use Hollywood's awful to like write their own shit for the last 50 years, like in fan fiction. Like I don't need gay shit to be in the media. I'm gonna put it there myself. Like I don't.
So you started to see this stuff come out, and you're like, were you kind of just like, what's going on here?
And I was like, okay, but I just honestly like I never really gave it that much thought because it wasn't, I wasn't teaching kids at the time. It wasn't happening to anyone that I like knew very well. It was sort of at the periphery.
What idea did you have about transgender or transsexual? What was that your idea about those things at the time?
At the time, and at the time being like 2015 to as recent as like 8 months ago, was just like, oh, I guess it's just people want to be the other sex. I mean, people want to do that. Like, okay, that's fine, I guess. Like, I don't. Mm-hmm. It seems hard and expensive, but to go with God. It didn't offend me personally, but I didn't. I hadn't really connected the dots as to like what I experienced than to what is going on now until later. And really it was about, a year ago that people I knew, like, that I played D&D with, or like people like, acquaintances, friends of friends, that kind of shit, that like would just start using they them pronouns for me without asking, and just like assuming it.
So do you think that this is the
This is the thing that made me look up and go, what the fuck's going on here?
Are you familiar with the term peaking?
Yes, now
Okay.
I am. And I'm like, oh, and I was like, wait, what's happening here? And so that was the first moment where I was like, something's not right here. And
So you getting, after living the vast majority of your life as just a lesbian or just a butch woman, the butch
just a butch
lesbian,
woman on myself, like in
yeah, you're
like
like, whatever.
long-term
You
butch
start
femme
getting
relationships do,
you
like,
start getting they them, and you're like, excuse me?
excuse me? Like, I didn't tell you my pronouns. Like, look at my big old tits. Like, I didn't say that this, I didn't
No,
tell
but
you
I feel
this.
you. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
And it just kept happening. And I was like, what is this? And, the other thing that I had started to notice, speaking of the media, is, I feel like the butch shot heard around the world was fucking Ellen Page transitioning, honestly. Like, well, we all were like, holy shit, what the fuck just
Yeah.
happened? And like,
Okay, but do you remember
because I remember her
there
like
was a
doing like,
singer
there
too?
was a moment where like she was actually butch, and I was like, oh my god, this is a
Was
butch
she?
lesbian, like in the world, sort of, for like 6 months, and then
I'm
like,
like, I don't know.
I mean,
I
she was
always,
married to a woman, and like
well,
she,
no,
looked like she did, but
I always saw her as probably being butch, like just
yeah,
by the way she carried herself and just
yeah,
kind of, I feel like she has some butch energy.
yeah, yeah,
Even though I'm sure she had to dress feminine and all this kind of shit
yeah,
as
yeah,
Hollywood. So I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying I don't remember seeing
yeah,
like an actual like physical manifestation of her butchness. I guess
yeah,
because you is what I would call clothes and hair.
yeah.
Um, but so do you remember, maybe not because you are a little younger, but there was a pretty famous, well, she was really famous back in the day for, she was in a rock band, that was in the
Oh, oh,
90s,
oh,
really
oh,
popular.
oh,
Is it
oh,
Kay's Addiction or
against
something?
me. Isn't
Okay,
it?
I think we said two different ones.
Isn't it against me? Hold on.
Is it Kay's Addiction? That was
No,
it. That
Laura Jane Grace, the lead singer of Against Me, 1997. That's when the band started anyway.
Oh, is
But
it?
I
Okay.
remember her. Yeah, no, I remember that too. Because that really, I think
I
one of
mean,
the first sort of, because I was into that kind of music at that age too. Like, and yeah, I remember that happening.
okay. So yeah, so there was the singer, of that, the whole band that came out was very popular, had like a hit in the 90s or whatever,
Hmm,
and
hmm.
she came out, and she was older too, like I think she's older than I am, and she came out to do the whole trans thing. And then there was another singer of not a super popular band, but like but popular enough among lesbians
Hmm.
and like the
Oh,
crowd, that also transitioned.
uh,
And like I remember those two things because I remember like the lesbians and just like the women around
because
me
you were
talking about
in the
it.
scene. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. I guess I was
yeah.
already in like the whole trans detrans thing. So
But like also you like had lesbian community in a way that like I really
true,
did at that
true.
time.
We were all bitter and didn't have tits, but we were still
Yeah, but it, yeah. So that
okay.
it,
So the Ellen Page thing though, was that a real like
so
shocker
that
to
was
you?
like, yeah, I was like, wait, what? And yeah, because it just seemed to like happen really fast, and I was like, what is happening? And then I just didn't really think about it that much, and again, like stopped teaching, so I didn't like, I hadn't seen the like a ramp up of this happening like in schools and
Mm-hmm.
shit. But like, yeah, it really was somewhat selfishly because I've been living under a rock in a, progression of toward relationships. I'm out of it now. It's all good.
I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, we all get there eventually.
Hey, sometimes it takes into your 40s to figure your shit out. Trust me.
Amen. Amen. If you haven't figured shit out yet, it's never too late.
It's never too late to figure shit out,
It's
ladies.
never too late, ladies, never. Uh, but yeah, no, it really was like it was that, and then it was, and I don't know, like I like don't know exactly how I ended up following Rachel on Instagram, but I remember seeing like a piece of hers, like a post that was going around that was about like, it wasn't like anybody's, but it was like some other like piece of media that like just where some basically it was also the knowledge that with not only Ellen Page but like other sort of like butch opportunities that would be like butch women, 5 years ago or whatever, were now
Yeah.
all of a sudden all not quote unquote women anymore. And I was just like, wait, what? Huh? And I and at the time I was like, I really didn't think about it that hard until
Yeah. So
yeah.
Rachel was your kind of your first like, oh, someone else, so
So
another lesbian's talking
someone else
about
is
this.
noticing this. Like, yeah,
Okay.
it's like that's when I first like, yes, about like 8 months ago, I guess, was like, wait, other lesbians are talking about this. Like other lesbians are noticing that like something is like kind of weird here. Like other lesbians are like, what, what's happening? Like, why are so many people saying that, I'm just not a woman. Like, I
Yeah.
just am choosing now to like not identify as a woman, as if that's gonna like somehow preclude me from experiencing sexism because I have a female body. Like,
Yeah,
and it
that
just
always
never
just,
that never made sense to me. Uh,
you can identify as anything you want, but
it's whatever
like
you want. It doesn't make a
that's
goddamn
not going to make you
difference.
safe,
No, it's
you know.
not. Like, it's
Now,
not.
taking the drug makes you safer if you can pass as male. That's legitimate.
Yeah, as long as you
As long as they
pass.
don't know, you have to be stealth.
Yeah,
I've talked
that's the thing. Like, you have to be stealth, and
Yep.
like, as if you're not, like, good luck. I don't.
I was talking, I mean, well, most of the young butches that are detransitioning that I'm in contact with
Mm,
are of the same kind of opinion about this. Is like, as butches, our point was to be stealth. If they knew we were female, it was worthless to us. We had to pass as male. Like that was the whole fucking point
that's
of
the
it.
whole point. Yeah,
And really, but we understand this need to pass as male as a way to hide, because we don't want to be seen as women,
yeah,
because of the abuse we've taken and the fear we
yep,
have and the ridicule we've underwent. Like that's
yeah,
why we're trying to
yep.
hide, you know.
That's why you're trying to hide. Yeah, and I think that's also why, like, I think I sort of shook myself out of it pretty quickly as a girl, is because like I knew there was no chance I would ever pass. Like, the voice is
Yeah.
one thing, but like if you like my like body shape, like there's no way like that I would ever like, you know,
Yeah,
unless I was literally like, no, it was
I
not gonna
honestly
happen.
think I didn't pass that well either. Because I have the same kind of like very curvy, always been a plus size gal kind of
Yeah.
body.
You
Um,
can't hide this hourglass. Like this hourglass
no,
don't
you
lie.
can't. And I tell you,
No,
4 years on testosterone still didn't really hide it that well.
no,
So,
no. Yeah,
but
it just
I will say that I really do think that the ability of myself to grow a massive beard and it was a beard in all the sense that you could say a beard
yeah.
was. It hid me, and it really, most people are not going to,
No.
they know something's weird, but they're like, it can't be. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's got to be a
No.
dude. No woman could ever have a beard,
No
like,
one would ever
you
have that
know.
beard. Exactly.
So
No,
I
and
think
I
that was a
just
lot of it.
yeah. Yeah. And
Oh,
then
so the sorry, not to,
no,
I'm
no,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
interrupt real quick because I found the fucking band I was trying to, Case Choice. They had a
Oh
song about
yeah.
addiction, and I got the two.
Yep, yep.
So Case Choice, yeah, it's a Belgian rock band, and that
Mm,
their lead singer, which was, and for me and the other lesbians, like she was such a big thing because she was like a lesbian who was out there singing for a huge band at the time,
mm,
and was, I think, a little bit more on the butch side, and it was just like
yeah.
this awesome representation, right? And then our
Yeah, I was too
representation
young for
fell through
that.
the hole.
Yeah.
Um, and
But
that
no, I
happened again
started
and again and again.
and again and again and again. And yeah, I started noticing that. And then yeah, the they theming. And then I was like, okay, well, something is going on here. And that's when I, started reading more about it and, hearing it. Because it became pretty obvious to me pretty quickly, you know, from A, being a lone wolf for so long, and B, like having some, fluency with second wave feminism, that like the only reason why you're gonna, or the major reason why you're gonna want to do that as a woman is because of sexism and because of misogyny, and like in order to, be safe and be, safe from the patriarchy. Like that's, of course people are gonna want to do that because that's they feel like that's the only option, even though like actually you can just break all of that shit and do whatever you want and say fuck them. And
So you're fairly new to this, which is interesting.
Yes. So
I think you're one of the newest.
Yeah. So this literally has happened in the last like, 2 or 3 months and this is the funniest thing is because, so seems totally unrelated at first, but like I had a friend that sent me an article and she was like, this is sort of a like, conservative take, but like, let me know what you think about this article. And it was totally unrelated, but it was really interesting, sort of, more nuanced conservative take. And it was published in this website called The Tablet, which is like, it's literally a Zionist newspaper. And, that's not really my bag, but I was like, that was a really interesting article. I'm going to keep, reading this paper. They seem to have interesting stuff. And they ran one of Jennifer Billick's stories.
Ah.
And I was like, what the fuck is this? And that's, and, because also growing up for a long time, like as someone that, I think of myself as an anarchist in the classical sense, and that like, let's like throw all of this government and hierarchy in the garbage and start over, and figure out something that works for everybody. And, I was always suspicious of corporations and suspicious of pharmaceutical companies and, suspicious of people fucking selling you things.
Yeah.
And then, it started to, I started to look around and be like, wait a minute, who benefits? People stand to make a lot of fucking money from this.
Yeah, who benefits?
Who benefits?
And ask
Literally,
yourself, when the media is pushing something.
When that's the thing, when the media is pushing something, we should have woken up. We like gay people should have fucking woken up when defense contractors and major corporations and pharmaceutical companies started sponsoring gay organizations. We should have fucking started asking questions.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I think there was some of us that did.
People did, but like not enough of us. And like now it's too fucking late. Like they've been bought and sold a million times. Like, and it really is a conspiracy because some people stand to make a lot of money on hormones,
there's
trying to preserve people's fertility, surgery, therapy, all of this shit. Like, if only they actually did the therapy, but like, all of the other like positions that are like shuttling this along.
You cannot get the therapy in the mix.
Because it's conversion therapy.
You can't get the therapy in there to muddy it up, right? You got to get them to rubber stamp that shit so they can just,
and so this
send them on to the doctors.
And like, so that's the thing is like, before this, I largely had like sort of bought the like general, like nice liberal line about it, which was like, trans people are real, like they need medical care, like, this is a human rights issue, it would never happen to like kids, or only people who really need this stuff get it. And then you start hearing stories about people like you who got a double mastectomy after 4 months, and you start to go, whoa. And I do things like read the survey responses on the detrans Reddit of desisting, and because that's where I learned that word for the first time. I had no idea that's what I was, really. I was, a desister, someone that like had a quote unquote trans identity for a time and then was like, wait, whoa, no. And then hearing from Rachel about how much this was happening in schools, in that time after when I was really living under a rock in the like late teens, where it was just happening more and more. And it was happening almost exclusively in gay girls, in smart gay girls. That's the thing that scares me so much about this, honestly. It's like, to get back to your question that you asked like a million years ago, is like, what do you think about what my experience would have been like now? Like, I shudder to think, honestly. Like, it scares me so much to think about, like, if all this propaganda was out there and like all of this sort of like affirmation therapy or like all affirmation sort of model that's pushed by, you know, the media, the American Medical Association, all that shit, who's sponsored by guess who, you know, Abbott. What does Abbott make? Lupron.
There's just nobody is questioning anything. No one's asking
no one's
why.
questioning anything. No one's asking why. And like I literally that's all it took. I just started asking why, who benefits.
And then it's when you started to, now I'm wondering if you're like me in the beginning, when you kind of came out and started to ask why about things and you got the backlash, did you go, whoa, why are you people freaking out? I was just asking a question.
That's the funny thing too, is it's like I had seen the turf thing happen and like people got all upset about J.K. Rowling, and I was just like, you know, again, I was like, oh, I guess trans women are women. Like I just didn't stop to think about it that hard, really. I just sort of like,
did you read her
no, like and so now I did.
That set everybody off.
Oh, and so of course now when I read it, I was like, this is what people got so upset about. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, and yeah, but so only because I'm coming into it so late, I like knew to, you know, not fucking tell all my like friends that are under 30 like what I'm doing or like what I'm noticing. Although now it's like sad and disturbing to like see just how like much fucking mind control is at work here, and like how many people have sort of bought all this shit hook, line, and sinker. And
I know you say you've never been that involved in like LGBT or lesbian community, but do you see it from your perspective of, do you see it really have taken over like lesbian community?
I mean, not in the sense of like one like geographic area, but certainly like of the lesbians that I know, you know, be they like, you know, people I've like lived with or like people I know from college. Like that's the other thing, is like, you know, a fair, not a bunch, but like a, you know, handful of the like butches from college like transitioned after college. And you know, I noticed that shit. And
you just didn't think much of it at
but
the time.
I just didn't know. I was like, okay, I guess people are doing that. It didn't strike me as something that was, you know, a conspiracy or that like was anything really larger at work than just like, well, not even, I guess this is available now, so people are doing it. Well, even if it
wasn't larger at work, was there any stop to ask why like a butch woman would want to transition?
I mean, that's the thing, is like I don't know if I like stopped to really like think that hard about what they were going through. Like they weren't people that I was like super close with.
Yeah, the reason I asked this is because in conversations I've had with older lesbians who actually were in second wave feminism of the time, they were like saying, they were like calling this shit from the beginning when it popped up. Yeah, and like, you know, when it really popped up in the 90s, they were already going, no, they're doing this because of misogyny. Like they're doing this because of, you know. Yeah. But I think they already had this worldview and this set of understanding a lot of stuff that I think most of us don't or didn't, because we're like just living our lives out here, you know.
I mean, I think there was a little bit of that too. It's just that like also because like, you know, I knew I had like flirted with that experience and that it was misogyny driven. You know, I thought it was like individual, like, you know, sort of sad cases basically, but not.
It is interesting the way that it was painted though by the media as this like super, super rare thing.
Yeah, it was.
And this very, very painful experience, the most painful you wouldn't understand. It's so painful. Yeah. Yet there's like, just seems like there's tons of people that have this condition. Like it doesn't make logical sense.
It makes sense. No, and that's the thing, is like when it was first like posited, it was like rare enough that I was like, okay, this is just something that happens every now and again. And like now that it's more accepted and accessible, people are, you know, saying that's what they are. And like
I also think the other thing is,
but then
I also think the other thing is that people don't know exactly what these medical procedures are that take place.
No, they do not. No, they don't. And
Did you?
That's no. Like,
do you now?
Yes.
And how do you feel about
bad, scared. Like I mean, that's one thing I wanted to ask you is like, where do you see this in 20 years? Like, what do you like just in, imagine, a lesbian bar 20 years from now, if God willing, there
A
is such a
lesbian bar.
thing. Yeah.
Um, well, I actually have thought about it in terms of like way in the future. Well, maybe not so way in the future for me, but I imagine that one day I might be in an old person home and there's going to be like a bunch of us with no tits. And we're all going, it's not going to be like a bunch of women. There's going to be this whole generation or two of women who just don't have tits and have been masculinized because they all went down this fucking transition thing.
That's basically what I was thinking. I was
And
like, so
actually,
this is just a
it's more than
whole,
likely going to be the old women who are actually probably 20 years behind me.
yeah.
There might be a few of me, but like, there's
Yeah,
gonna be
the people
yeah,
my age and younger. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It just
But I also think,
that's what I think too, is like that's the thing that like also, because it really was the scale that got me to like wake up and be like, okay, there's something like
yeah.
very wrong here. It was the scale, because when it was just like a case here, a case there, it was like, okay, like this is something that happens, this doesn't really impact me, okay. But then when it was suddenly like lots of lesbians and like lots of young lesbians and
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of women like taking these surveys, or now that there's started looking up and looking around, like hundreds and thousands and more question mark of detransitioning women, like that's
And
really the
so
thing that got me to look around and be like, holy shit, like this is scary, and this is going to be a whole generation of like bisexual and lesbian women that like aren't, they're going to be sterile. Like this is a whole generation of like sterilized gay kids, like boys and girls, and like that's really scary to think about.
yeah, well, I mean, I understand the sterilization thing. I think that word kicks people up and that's why people use it. But for me, it has more to do with that these people's
And they're gonna be
bodies,
lifelong medical patients.
well,
Like,
these people's bodies have been altered in ways that are unhealthy for them, and we don't
yeah,
really know how
and
that is going to play
experimental.
out. Yeah. And also
Yeah,
you took something away from them. You did.
yeah. And like
Especially young ones who didn't
they're kids.
yeah.
Kids cannot consent to that shit. And like,
Well, and I mean
ugh.
I've often been an advocate. I'm one of the annoying ones that will continue to like harp on about the adults too, because I really do think that, like, especially that it's taken over like now that it's taken over the therapeutic world as well. Like
Mhm.
no one with gender dysphoria or any kind of feeling of resentment, hate, or uncomfortability with their sexed body can go into a therapist and get any kind of actual treatment
That's so
anymore.
fucking scary. That's
You
that's
really are just put right down the pipeline to be medicalized.
yeah,
And they
that's
want to medicalize you quick too. Like,
quick. That's the thing that really got me to, yeah, that's the thing that piqued me ultimately. It was like knowing that like the me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like a young gay kid that like is a little awkward and like, feels uncomfortable with puberty, like
but
and
I also
doesn't
think this,
love having, and would have been put on that fast track
yeah. But I also think
if I
this
were growing up
really, I
now.
really think this sucks in butch lesbians though. I really think
Literally,
this
yes, it
sucks us in.
does. And yeah,
And I think it can at any age. I'm not
eh,
saying it,
yeah,
but it can, because I mean, it
it
did me.
obviously does. It sucked in Rachel and she was like 25. Like,
Yeah, it sucked in Ellen
yeah,
Page.
yeah,
It sucked in
exactly.
these musicians. It sucked in these, famous writers.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many writings
So many.
I have looked up the woman who wrote that, and maybe she wrote it in the 90s or the early 2000s, and she's fucking trans now. And I'm like,
Andrea Gibson.
I mean,
One of my other favorite like lesbian writers. Hold on, there's books over there. Yeah, no, I also have noticed that, where yeah,
and
just poets that I
just from
liked.
my own
I'm just like, holy shit, dude. Like,
small experience in a somewhat small town, who had a trans support group that maybe had 10 people at a time that came through it. When I was there, there was a butch lesbian in her 50s trying to transition.
jeez.
There was a gay man in his 60s who had transitioned. And you can really see the difference between the homosexuals that transitioned and the straights that are doing it. Like we're all thrown together, but there's a very different thing happening
Big
there.
difference. Yeah.
The gays are doing it because of internalized and external homophobia and misogyny. You know, I think even the gay men are going to be suffering from some of that too, because
because they have feminine traits that they're being fucking ridiculed for.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's still misogyny.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's still this patriarchal fucking misogynistic standards. And it was interesting because the gays were, most of us were older, but there was the kids too. You know, there were all the up and coming gays that were also getting swept into it.
Yeah. And that's the thing that really like made me stop and go like, holy shit, like lesbians everywhere need to like stand up and start saying some shit. We need to talk to younger women. Like we need to set good examples in our lives. Like we need to like, you know, I always knew it was important, like as a teacher to like, I can't tell you how many kids came up to me when we're like, you were the first woman I ever met or saw that like didn't shave her legs and like didn't shave her armpits and like,
yeah, right.
You know, was just like obviously like a masculine person, like didn't try to like disguise like my deep voice, like, and kids like appreciate that shit and they need it.
It gives them an option.
Like,
it gives them
it gives them an option.
Right?
And like nowadays that, if your only option is like, you know, haggard looking Ellen Page, like God forbid, like that be the only option for like a young, like butch lesbian. Like there's a different world out there.
Yeah.
And second wave feminism is a quick way to like
it's really
help
needed.
inoculate you to that shit.
Well, and it's really needed in that, and that is why it's being so harshly shut down.
So shut down. And like nobody wants to like let women fucking get together and talk because it's dangerous.
No one wants to admit that Janice Raymond called that shit in the 70s.
seriously, people called that shit. And like I was I have some younger roommates, and they were watching of all things, Paris is Burning the other day, which is just powerfully misogynistic in so many ways. Just the things that these guys are saying in that movie. But like there's also, I was one moment when I walked by and there was a queen getting interviewed, and you know, this was what, the 80s, and he's talking about how glad he is that he didn't like medically transition, because now he can enjoy the last 40 years of his life and like be healthy and be whole and like not have totally like wrecked his body while his friends can't.
Yeah.
And I was just like, God damn, like people need to fucking listen to that shit. Like,
yeah,
it's you are only, and maybe this is something else I've noticed of like lesbians who are like both like gender critical, like gender ideology critical, not and ones who, you know, have accepted feminism as their Lord and Savior, are also like actually religious. Like some of us like have just fucking come back to God and been like, you know what? Like God wanted to make a butch woman and he did. And look, I'm here. Like this is what I'm meant to be, God damn it. And like no fucking corporation or pharmaceutical like tycoon can tell me otherwise. Like
so I wanted to touch on briefly. I mean, I don't know, maybe this is
I'm not
be long.
I'm
Whatever.
not good at being brief. Yeah.
It's okay. So the fangirl stuff.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So
this is not my wheelhouse.
Yeah. So I like mentioned it a couple of times, but like, you know, in my, you know, I've basically just been like peaking nonstop for the last like 4 months, just like reading everything I can read, like doing tons of like research and just like just diving face first into all this shit, just because I was like, oh my God, A, how did I not know this was going on? And like, B, like, what is going on here? One of the things I like stopped to read was the survey of folks on the detrans subreddit. I'm like some big like social science nerd. I love looking at a survey. And, you know, Rachel and I were looking at it together for one of the Stonebridge Disco episodes and happened upon the like short answer survey responses. And they ask like, you know, tell us about your transition and detransition story, da da da. And they have like a section for desisters, a section for detransitioners. And in multiple of those like short answers, girls were talking about like being in fandom, young, growing up, like reading slash, so like male, like in sexy stories, basically porn written by women for women. It's been going on since Kirk and Spock looked at each other lustily in the late 60s.
So
And
are the lesbian girls
yes,
into this too?
yes, that's the
See,
thing that
because
people do not understand. It's
I
not
thought it
just
was just the straight
no,
girls.
it's not just the straight girls. Like
Oh,
it's straight girls, it's bisexual girls, there's lesbians in there. I know
interesting.
I am one of them, and also I know plenty of others. And like so and like but the thing I enjoyed about it and like knew what I liked about it and like why I like thought it was like, fun and like sexy and enjoyable is because it was like hobby dominated by women. It's like one of the quickest ways to read like women's writing. It's a massive like women's writing community where we just like don't have to like follow any rules and can do our own shit. And like there's so many of unique sort of genre elements that like fangirls have come up with over the last 50 years, blah blah blah. And like part of that is like making gay shit happen in media that you watch that there's no gay shit in, because Hollywood has only decided that gays and lesbians are fun and sexy and commodifiable in the last 5
aren't
years.
most of these stories
Yes.
involving gay men?
Well, yeah, because like there's not the female characters that are available to us. There's like folks that are into Xena and shit like that, and like there are girls writing fem slash and etc. But like it is largely revolve around male couples because those are the spicy relationships, the like tension that's like written in all of these, all of the interesting characters in almost all of mainstream fiction, media, movies, blah blah blah, is about men and about men doing men stuff. So like that's what's available.
So the male characters are strong.
They're just
they're
just a vehicle. Like they're well presented, they're interesting, they're well made.
Okay.
There is like the internalized misogyny of like, they have their full human specificity. Like they are the ideal, like, the default person.
So
it's not even thinking of them like as men per se. It's just
how do these stories lead to some trans stuff?
So that's the thing. It's like, I just, did this, but have been doing this my whole life, reading fucking basically just like gay porn written by women, because it's the most emotionally satisfying shit. Just dude porn. Oh, I'm here to fix the faucet, like stick it in, stick it out, peace out, like that. Nah, that doesn't really do it for me. And like there's some science behind this, but you need some emotional investment, and the things to get emotionally invested in could be your favorite TV show or your favorite sports team. And maybe you can think about them kissing. But the thing that I kept seeing in these responses was like, I read slash, I watched, boys love anime. I watched a yaoi, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was hot, so I figured that I must be a gay man trapped in a woman's body, or like that. Oh, I must be that. Like that is me. Instead of just being like,
I get for straight girls, but I'm having difficulty understanding where this comes from if you're a lesbian or or attracted to other girls or women. Don't know.
That's what I don't understand. Like that's the thing, and I'm like, it can just be like, it could just be what you think is hot. It doesn't have to be anything about you or like mean anything like about who you are as to like what you think is fun.
But do the young lesbians also think, oh, I'm not a lesbian, I must be a gay man because they read this?
That was one I read, and then like another one was like, basically that like see, that was the thing I like didn't, I just, that's the thing that got me so confused when I was reading those. I was just like, why? Like, what is this? Like, some of them are like mentioning girlfriends and like mentioning like, you know, one of them in particular that stuck with me was like, you know, one girl that was like in a relationship with the other girl. It was like, oh, we'll both transition and like live out our like BL fantasy. And I was
Oh
like,
Lord, yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Like,
I saw that a lot actually.
yeah,
I
that's
saw a lot of the young bisexual and lesbian women, young women who said they were gay men, but they would never have sex with actual men. They were having
yeah,
sex with other FTMs, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Which is
Still,
again with the like misogyny and like the
yeah.
homophobia, but also the like disconnect between like fantasy and reality, and just knowing that like you are not what you eat, kids. Like in that sense, like
In that sense. Oh,
in that sense, you are not what you eat. Like
yeah.
you can enjoy a hobby, you can enjoy a genre of porn, you can enjoy thinking about, you know, boys having romantic relationships. That does not mean you're a boy. Like it
And
can
also,
just be what you think is cool.
it's also probably not going to translate that you're actually going to be into boys
No,
in the real
in
world.
the real world,
Yeah.
it
So,
doesn't. Because and that's the
so
thing that
you
like
don't have
that
any.
people don't realize is like what they're actually like attracted to about the boys in these stories and about these relationships largely is just because like, you know,
It's
men,
not actual maleness. It's
it's
not.
not actual
Yeah.
maleness. It
Yeah.
is shit written by women. It is female like emotionality and like sexuality expressed, you know,
It's
with male
actually.
paper dolls,
It makes
but
me think. It
it's
makes me.
not any maleness actually there.
It makes me think that it's women again doing emotional labor to make men look better than they are. These stories.
Truly.
And then these girls or women are thinking, oh, dudes seem so cool. And
It
then
seems
they
so
go out there
cool.
and they're like, oh, dudes are horrible.
Dudes are horrible.
Maybe.
Yeah, no.
If they're
And
straight, they're
but
probably okay with it.
yeah, but that's the thing. But yeah, but people don't stop and think that like actually no, this is like a totally female like women's fantasy and a women's hobby and like a women's writing for other women.
Yeah, but do you know what I find interesting about this though? Is because I've talked about this previously too. The butch lesbian to gay male transition pipeline. A lot of butch
What
lesbians
the
who've
fuck is up
lived.
with that?
I've seen it. I've seen it. I've
I've
seen it.
seen
And
it too,
I'm
but
not the only
like
one to see it.
I
Like
know.
I have a friend who's a femme who talks about seeing the same fucking shit. So with some of the butches that she had been with and known. And it's
It's
like,
so weird.
yeah, they transition and then they say they're gay men and they're with men. What the
Yeah.
fuck's happening
What the
there?
fuck is happening there?
And so like this pairs, I think,
Yeah.
interestingly with this. Also, what I noticed, and this would have been in my around 23, 24, I was in community college and I was hanging around with young folks of my similar age. And the lesbians I was hanging around with were all into gay male porn.
Yes, that is exactly it. It is a different version of that.
Yeah.
It's gay male porn, but like this is the like written version and it's actually made by women, not like a porn production company or whatever. But
Exactly,
yeah,
but that's a thing. And
it's a
that's
thing.
so much a thing that it was even in a Hollywood movie, a big Hollywood movie about a lesbian couple. There's a scene in there, I forget the movie, someone's gonna know, but
Uh,
there's a scene in there where they're getting all cozy in bed because they're gonna be romantic and they pull up a gay male porn to watch together.
it's and I have a theory about that though, is because
What's
like
your theory?
it's when there's no women involved, like there's no the patriarchy just sort of dissolves. Like it's just two human beings that
Humans fucking.
retain their whole humanity fucking,
Yeah,
which
and
is more
enjoying it.
comfortable and
There's
enjoying it.
nothing attached there. They're
There's
free
nothing
to enjoy
attached
it.
to it.
Yeah.
That is exactly why I like, you know, it's exactly why this is appealing and like why it's been popular and
That's
like why there is a lesbian and bisexual like, you know, market quote unquote for this is
or
like
gay male porn. Yeah.
because yeah, because it's patriarchy free.
I actually think that's been my conclusion as well.
Yeah.
That's why I think it happens. I mean, I used to be into watching a lot of porn. I don't anymore. I don't engage with porn at all. That's my rad fem thing I do.
Yeah.
I don't engage with porn.
Speaking of shit that second wave feminists were fucking right about, people.
Yeah, right. But I did used to watch a lot of gay male porn, and I think for me it was a way to to access a sexuality that I didn't have to worry about or see women being mistreated or being used. And also I didn't have to worry, even though I thought it might be an okay porn, shit could turn real quick. And I didn't want to be surprised by any kind of like horrible thing being done to a woman.
So, totally. 100%.
But I'm also distanced from these men.
Yes.
Because I'm not actually sexually into men.
No.
And I'm not a man. So I can look at them as these creatures doing this thing.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
It really does separate it out. And a lot of sexologists like to say because women can do this means we're sexually fluid. And I think it might be kind of maybe the opposite. I think that the reason we can do that is because maybe we can compartmentalize better.
Yeah,
sex
totally.
And sexual drive and sex and like getting off versus that. I don't know.
Like, what is actually like, what is actually horny making, whether that's like
because like just there is
emotionally horny making or physically, need something with a good story. Fan fiction has your back.
Yeah, it was. I mean, at least the way I viewed it, it really was just the complete essence of just sex itself.
Just sex, exactly.
There was nothing else involved.
Nothing else attached. Yeah. Exactly. No, that is 100%
right
to play. Yeah.
The issue is when you bring gender as it's understood now into this, it really confuses the fuck out of people. It really
confuses people. And then and you're like, well,
and also when you start getting fantasy overlapping with reality and people trying to push fantasy or push what you think you want in your brain into reality,
literally
also gets really fucked up, because
and that's I think the major problem here. So like about the same time, I've like been starting to like really put all these weird pieces together, but like about the same time, 2015, 2016, this phenomenon started appearing in fandom called anti-shipping. And it was literally people who not just were like anti-slash, like that slash had won the war.
What is slash?
That's gay male,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Relationships. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I forget that not everybody knows the whole lingo. I lost my train of thought.
2015.
Oh yeah. So there was this phenomenon in fandom that started popping up called anti-shipping, and basically it was usually young kids like under 18 often that were just like, it's wrong to think about fictional characters having sex. You're a bad person if you read like porn at all, and like there's like anything questionable about it. Like if you like take in this media, like you're a bad person. Like it means you like really are a pedophile or really believe like in whatever. Like it's basically, it was like any sort of like any sort of like fetish thing, down to just like even just the idea of like, oh, if you just like imagine these characters having sex, like you're bad, basically was the long and short of it.
Well, it's very Christian.
Like, it's very, but like it wasn't framed as a Christian thing.
No, but it is. It's
very Puritan, and like literally people call it Puritans. It's literally, if you think it's the same as doing it, and like that mindset started like popping up in fandom a lot in like 2015, 2016, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? And for a while I was just like, haha, like dumb kids, like you are not what you eat. Like fantasy is like actually like totally separate from reality, and like you can fantasize about whatever the fuck you want and it's harm free, because guess what? It's fake. It's in your mind. It's not real. Like what is going on in your mind like does not mean anything like essential or indivisible about you. Like,
do you think this fed into transition stuff though?
But I think it's like a symptom of the same like weird like transhumanist disease, or like just like how like dissociated like
Dissociation. Yeah.
kids are like from their bodies or like from their, and like how like everything is sort of, you know, everything's focused on the individual and like what you like create and like how you like
Oh,
shape
you
your
can create
experience,
it, and then you can buy it. You can
and then you can
purchase
buy
your
it.
very own identity,
Yes, and you can buy your very own identity, but it's like
and
that weird
insurance will
like,
cover it.
yeah, mm, mm. Yeah, but that also started happening about the same time, and I was just like,
Oh, okay.
what?
You're like, what the fuck is
What the fuck is this?
Yeah, something
And
turning here.
but yeah, but it's, I think it is a symptom of that, you know, if you think it, you must be it,
Yeah.
thinking that has really like swept up a lot of people. Yeah, there's
And
this whole narrative that like, oh, if you like, now it's like, oh, if you like sports, like you must be a boy. And I'm like, okay, wait, feminists did this like already.
yeah.
We
Well, I mean,
already
and
did
the
this.
thing is,
What happened? Why
I
did we
do
forget
think
what happened in the last 30 years? Like,
I do think that everything we're seeing now is basically just the same shit our society has been believing for a very long time, just on steroids.
it's just on steroids.
Literally on
Yeah, it's just
steroids.
the late capitalism version. Yeah,
I
literally.
mean,
It's
because this, you know, the idea that boys like sports and girls don't, that's a sexist stereotype that's existed for a very,
yes,
very long time, you know,
for
but
a long
now
time.
we're putting it, we're really enforcing it, and we're
But
medicalizing it.
even in the 90s or like, you know, in the 2000s, there was still some like, you know,
No,
tomboy feminism of like, you know,
there was
it's okay.
pushback. There was pushback, and then that got ran over, and I think it got ran over by our corporate overlords, because that's not money making. People
No,
being happy with themselves as they are is not money making.
not money making. Loving your body never made anybody any money.
I mean,
And like,
if you really want to go off the rails with this, I'll just throw this in.
oh yeah,
The whole like women shaving, deodorant, the whole beauty and
all of
that
it,
whole thing was created.
all of it.
That was
Uh,
all created. The
yeah,
diamond ring, wedding rings were
all of it.
created by capitalism.
That's
You
why I
know,
just don't understand why it seems like the entire like, you know, nice American liberal left and like young like quote unquote queer like kids who think of themselves as left of center have like totally bought all of this and not stopped to be like, wait a minute.
well, that's why critical thinking is so important to have, and that is why open discussions are so important to have.
Yeah,
That's why this whole idea, and even when I was trans identified, I did not like this idea of no debate.
yeah,
I did not like this idea of deplatforming. I did not
yeah.
like any of that stuff. I'm like, no, go ahead. You say he's a Nazi? Let's bring him in.
This is
Let's
fucking
sit down,
America.
because this is
Like,
what we do. We sit down. I mean, this is how I think of it. Sit down, listen to this bozo, take in what he says, come up with your own rebuttal, your own argument, your own proofs, and you outwit this motherfucker. That's what you do, right? You don't deplatform him and then tell him to go away. Like you're not solving anything in society by doing that.
and like that's
And
just,
who gets to make that choice?
who gets to make that choice?
That's what's become the problem.
Yeah.
If you cannot claim that you're a minority if you have the power to literally shut down freedom of speech.
Literally. Like when that's the other thing. Like
Freedom of association.
fast ways to peak, like realizing when like Eventbrite is shutting down things like, you know, Let Women Speak Austin. And I'm like, wait, since when does Eventbrite, you know, major corporations, like
Do you know
since when
that?
are major corporations at the front of any civil rights movement?
And look at the way that
When?
social media and online stuff has shut down so much discourse. Like
Yeah,
there has been, it's difficult
it's
for any kind
scary.
of gender critical anything to have a place to like have a website. You have to be
That's,
careful where you go,
yeah.
because they'll fucking kick your shit off. I
This is
can't
why
tell you.
one of the only places you're gonna see like anything, you know, sort of sane reporting about this is in, yeah, the Tablet and the Federalist.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
because they're the only ones that will publish it.
Well, are they conservative?
I mean, the Federalists, aren't they?
I think they are.
Yeah,
And
they're libertarian at
the
least.
reason that the conservatives can do this is because the conservatives have their own money to do it,
Yeah,
and their
yeah.
people agree with them, right? They're not getting ostracized. The left,
No, their
us,
people
we're
agree.
getting
Yeah,
completely kicked out, so we have nowhere to go, and we can't go to the other side because we don't agree with a lot of what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
especially
But
for
like,
gay people.
yes, exactly. And I'm like, a stopwatch was right twice a day. Like,
Yeah, my wife says that all the time.
and honestly, like when it's the fate and health of, thousands of like basically butch lesbians like us out there on the line, like
Well, that's the thing, that the
we
right
gotta do
doesn't give a
something.
shit about the gay people caught up in this. The
No,
right doesn't
no.
give a shit about me.
But like I
Mm.
would gladly like use whatever fucking lever we can, I'll get in bed with anybody to keep this from happening, honestly. Like is the thing that I've like come away with. It's
And
like,
I
I'll make a deal with
respect
that devil for 5 seconds to be like, okay, let's.
I respect every woman's choice to do what she feels like she needs to do.
Adults go with God, but
I personally have decided, well, when it comes to who you get in bed with, as far as
yeah,
politics, I personally have chosen to really not go down that road because I just feel like I can't. I was too hurt and fucking traumatized by the right and by the Christian right to ever step with them.
that's true.
I just can't.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't.
fair.
I'm
Yeah.
here. I transitioned from because of their fucking bullshit. Honestly. My mom was an evangelical. I remember going to all those fucking
Yeah.
anti-gay meetings and
Oh,
groups
fuck,
in the 80s in the
dude.
church,
Oh, yeah. See,
trying
I
to get
grew up like,
teachers fired because, trying to scout out who
oh,
the gay teacher was to get them fired. And,
yikes.
People forget that history too.
They really do.
Well, they're not
People,
like that anymore. How do you know? They were.
yeah, they were.
I mean,
They
don't tell
were.
me they're not.
Yeah, no, they were. I just like am so glad that I grew up like the democratic kind of Catholic. There's two kinds of Catholics, so like
Yeah.
the right wing and the left wing, and I thankfully grew up like left wing Catholic, which
Yeah.
I,
It's a very different story
it's
for
totally
those of
different
us
story.
who grew up in the evangelical right.
Evangelical. Oh,
Very different, a beast, and it's still
no
a
kidding.
beast.
And it's still
Still
a
a
beast.
beast.
Yeah, no, that's real.
I mean, if you listen to my interview with Casey, we talk about that. I mean, she's only 22. She grew up in evangelical church not too long ago because she's only 22, and I found it sad that she got the same treatment I did, and I grew up in the 80s in the church.
Sad.
It's like here we have a shit ton of years between us, and still we are experiencing the same horrible homophobia.
And it's just a different flavor of homophobia.
Well,
Like,
now,
it's
the
just,
evangelicals have kept it the same.
oh no,
Thank
they're the
God.
same, but
God
like,
bless them.
yes, yeah,
But no, it's a different kind of homophobia coming from the left now.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. It's the gaslighting kind of homophobia where they're like, no, it's not homophobic to say that like
We're being
lesbians need to
inclusive.
like dick.
No, lesbians
No,
can't have their own space. No, women can't have their own space. No, women don't exist. It's called
yeah,
being inclusive.
that was the other thing that like got me to like start looking around. I was like hearing people just jump like bend over backwards to avoid saying the word woman in like any context, and I was like,
Have you
okay,
noticed how
what is
much
happening here?
it's slipped into all of our language though?
And
Do you
you
recognize how
know
often we
why?
say people
It's
instead of
because
women?
these fucking foundations, like it's because these rich ass motherfuckers can bankroll like every, you know, from the grassroots on up. I haven't seen something this astroturf since
Yeah.
fucking the Tea Party. Literally.
Right. Yeah.
And it's because there's people been pumping, literally billions of dollars into cultural organizations, from your gay center around the corner to, the HRC to make it so, Planned
I really
Parenthood,
think
like all that shit. Like,
it's interesting too to see how many of some of the more famous authors of like, the 1984 and Fahrenheit, was
yeah,
it Fahrenheit?
yeah.
I forget the number.
451. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
It's Fahrenheit. It makes me think of like how influential TV and media has become in controlling people's minds. And
yeah,
I feel like when he wrote that, like he
yeah.
was seeing that already and going, this is going to be a problem.
This is a problem.
You
This is
know,
a problem. Yeah, because when you see it, you can believe it, and if you don't see it,
the dude called like earbuds in the 50s.
yeah, yeah.
Everybody walking around on their phones,
It's crazy. It's crazy. But
Um,
yeah,
So where are you now in your space? You're newly peaked.
oh yeah.
Where do you like feeling now? You're looking to go or do, or
I mean, I mean, I really, the thing that was so like persuasive to me is the like thing that I want to just start fucking telling everybody that will listen is like, just follow the money. Just follow the money and ask who benefits. Like, because the web of money at play and the amount of money and just the absolute scope of this, like having, knowing the nonprofit world and like knowing what kinds of levers of power, like, you know, uh, anonymous donor advised funds and like, foundations with a PO box can have and like getting their point across.
well, remember, corporations are people now.
Literally, like,
Yeah.
literally, this is the thing that like really, I just want people to stop and think, and like, when did we start believing everything that corporations say?
Yeah.
When did we start
Can I
thinking that
ask you?
corporations were good and that like they were selling us anything that
Yeah,
was like
right.
positive
They've been a shit show since the beginning. Like
since the beginning?
honestly,
Why did we all suddenly think that like they were benign and like we're
and on our
right
side,
and on our side this
they're
time? Like,
not on our
they're
side.
not on our side. They're never on our side. They're never going to be on our side. And yeah, the fact that
They're on our side as much to get our money. That's what they're
yes,
on our side and control us. But
exactly,
that's it.
exactly. And really the fact that like, yeah, stopping and thinking about when was the last time, every major corporation, every major Hollywood studio,
Mm-hmm.
all of
That's a
these,
whole lot of power. It's a whole lot of
when
power.
was the last time they all threw their lot in with a civil rights issue, quote unquote? Never.
I
Like,
mean,
when were they at the front of any wave of like, oh, like we want to be accepting and like help people and blah blah blah? When were they like the first ones out?
yeah. I mean, I guess you could say Hollywood. There was the whole AIDS thing. They really were. I remember the red ribbons, but
Because
even
they're
it was
actually
shocking
gays in
though.
Hollywood, though.
Yeah, but
But
it was
yeah,
even still shocking when like a celebrity would wear the red ribbon,
oh
because
yeah,
it was still like, oh,
she was still like almost career suicide.
and also
Yeah,
that did come from the push of like gay activism though.
yeah, exactly.
But I wonder
Yeah,
how much, well, not to get too side railed, but their corporate money got involved there too. So
yeah, yeah,
okay, so we're gonna sum it up. If
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
let me ask you if there is a message you feel like you would want to say to other lesbians or others. We'll throw the bisexual gals in there too,
Mhm.
to other women who love women.
Just love yourself, man. Like, just you're only on this rock one time that you know of. You only get one body. You only have one chance. Just love
how
yourself
how do you
and go to therapy and get right with God.
oh,
And
I don't know. I don't tell women to go to therapy anymore.
I mean, well, I mean, not about gender
Yeah.
stuff. Don't
If
do
you
that.
have
But like,
anything else to go to therapy for, great. If it's
go,
gender, stay away from them.
stay away
Don't
from the
go.
therapist.
Don't go.
But like, yes, no, therapy definitely helped me. Like getting a
No, I
PTSD
know.
diagnosis, like all of that shit. Like, because I like, was not talking about that stuff in
Yeah.
particular. But and thankfully, like my uh I'm a peer with my therapist. Like she's younger than me. Like,
That
so
gets weird.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, well, she's not that much younger than me, so it's okay. But like
Yeah.
it there was never like that sort of hierarchy of like, oh, therapist knows best. Like, no, it was just I'm venting with this girl. But
Well, I see, I see a lot of, and I've experienced this too, even in when I've gone to some, more lesbian feminist centered private gatherings.
mhm,
I've even got pushback from lesbians telling me that I'm being transphobic or mean. I mean, how do you approach lesbians who think that by not supporting, trans kids and you know, all our trans siblings, that this is
I think that
we're being hateful.
I push back on
bigots.
that as like, okay, who are these trans kids? Who are they? They're young lesbian girls. So many of them. And like, don't you want them to grow up and like be their fabulous lesbian selves? Like, I really do. Like, I really do want to, you know, see the next generation of you know, lesbian rock stars and lesbian basketball players, and I want a lesbian for president. God damn it! Like,
Yeah.
We can't do that if we, you know, let ourselves get fucking, you know, medicalized into oblivion at the behest of billionaire men. Like, we've got to like wake up and save ourselves, because nobody else is going to fucking do it. That's the real thing. Like, we have got to stick up for each other and
I
ourselves.
agree.
And like, you know, somebody has got to sit younger lesbians down and be like, look, why do you think you feel like this? Who benefits from this?
Well,
Is it
also
you?
just why?
Well, just why? Ask
What do
yourself
you,
why.
I
Like, that's
feel
it's really
like
that simple.
I
Follow
feel
the
like I'm a
logic all the way
boy.
through.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm a boy. I'm a boy. I feel like I'm a boy. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What does that mean to
What
you?
does that
What do you
mean?
mean you feel like a boy?
Yeah. Yeah, why?
That's a very simple question that no
So
one wants to ask.
no one asks it.
You
No
know why?
one
Because
stops.
I
Yeah.
think the
No.
harsh reality is because they don't want to admit that we live in a society that maybe was starting to get better, but now has just kind of twisted the misogyny and twisted the control of women to such an extent
Just
that now we don't even see it
now
anymore.
we don't even see it, because that's, I mean, that is how power operates in the 21st century too. Like, you know, this is also why I think being an anarchist made me a little quicker to sort of look up and be like, whoa, like this is
I think so. You
this
already
is
were
wrong.
suspicious.
I was already was suspicious
You're like
of
that meme of the like shifty-eyed dude or
yeah.
something. You know, like
What? Like, something is not right here.
yeah.
Like, and you know, I think more and more lesbian women are starting to realize like something does not feel right, and just talk to other women. Like, ask yourself questions,
I
read the
think that
works of other women before you.
I think lesbians need to put lesbians first. They need to put
Yes.
women first, and they absolutely need to not look to men, not
No.
look to Hollywood, not look
No.
to corporations, not look to anybody else. Create your own shit.
Look in
And
here.
basically we really do need to take a page out of our foremothers
Yes.
from the 60s and 70s who were like, yeah, this society, nah, dude, create your own shit because they
Create your own
suck.
shit. They
You know,
suck.
just
Literally.
do your own books, have your own bookstores, have your own coffee
Yeah.
shops, you know.
Alternate power. This
Yeah.
is how we can create a heaven on earth for lesbians, is like with our fucking blood, sweat, and tears. And we've got to make that for each other and for
Absolutely.
the younger girls, because nobody else is.
That's why I
And
do this.
they're not going to have a future to grow up to of like a lesbian culture or
And
anything.
I think as lesbians, we have got to, if we have got to speak out, we got to be
We've
brave. Our
got to.
foremothers were brave. How,
Yes.
what do you think was happening to them? Our
Yeah.
foremothers were getting beaten, raped, killed, thrown in prison.
Yeah.
You know, come on now. Their
Yeah.
kids taken away. What are we gonna get? Honestly, what are we gonna get? We're gonna lose a job.
Maybe.
Find another
Yeah.
job. I
Find
don't
another
know. I mean, maybe I'm being too harsh, but I'm just like, come on, man, step up. This is
or
serious.
just like, you know, do what
Do
I'm
what you
doing.
can behind the scenes then.
Maintain some plausible deniability and talk anyway. Like,
or do something. Like, there's tons of work to be done
there's lots
that
of
you
work to
can
be
do
done.
behind the scenes. Get involved with the lesbian underground, with women's festivals, because they still exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just fucking underground again because we're so
Yeah.
progressive now.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my final thoughts, folks.
It is, but no, I mean, I really agree with your final thoughts. And I, you know, we've got to get feminism bad.
Yeah. Lesbians need feminism.
Lesbians need feminism.
Absolutely.
They go together like peanut butter and jelly.
That's what we have come. That is our conclusion, folks.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on my channel, and thank you for letting me interview you. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I think
I'm sorry I can't be brief.
No, it's okay. I think, yeah, no worries. but I do think you brought a good perspective as
Thank you.
somebody who went through this stuff before it was really like shoved down everybody's throat. And, you know, it shows how similar so many lesbian experiences are, or
Yeah,
even bisexual women who are same-sex attracted and have to go through these struggles of who am I?
yeah,
What am
yeah.
I? You know,
And it's having compassion for how hard it is to live in the patriarchy.
exactly. Just as a woman and as a woman who is attracted to other women is
Yep.
it can be a difficult road to travel.
Yeah. Yep.
Very rewarding though,
Yeah.
but can be difficult.
It's so rewarding. It's so worth it. That's the thing I want young lesbians to see. Is like, actually, there is a future for you. Like
There's a future.
there is a good
It's
world out there.
all
You
right.
just got to
Thank you.
make it.
Thank you.
Bye.